Hi, I'm Pete, and welcome to Just a Few Acres Farm. The weather has really taken a nosedive these past few days. We're back to winter. This is a hard time of year for me to take this kind of weather because I got stuff to do. It's time to be outside getting stuff ready for the busy summer season. Cold weather makes the cows eat more. I don't blame them. And it makes the pigs all snuggle up in the hay. That guy's pretty much buried. Good for you guys staying warm. This guy seems to want something from me, and I think I know what it is. Okay, let's make that pig happy. He's telling his mates to get up. Get up! It's time to get up! I'm going to chew on your eyeball. How about you? You get up. I need some company. I'm doing this for you, you know. Then we've got this guy over here that's happy to have the buffet all to himself. Being that the weather is so cruddy, I thought what I could do in this video is talk about using our farm as a case study of kind of the evolution of a small farm through its early stages, because we've been through those stages and our business model changes as we go, and this is important stuff if you're starting your own small farm. I want to get one thing out of the way right off the bat, and that's that our farm doesn't operate at all like a traditional farm would. This isn't the old days, so although some things we do look traditional, it's because they make sense from a modern small farming perspective. The big differences are that we're selling to a completely different consumer base than traditional farms did. It's kind of a segment of the community that are interested and passionate about local small farms, and it's a direct-to-consumer business, so never ever are we selling to the auction barn, never ever are we selling wholesale, because it's a balancing act to actually make a living on as few acres as we have with a livestock farm. So operating our farm business as we do requires a lot of marketing and sales savvy, which really wasn't a skill set of the traditional farms that may have looked somewhat like ours. All right, ye piggers, carry on. Try not to sleep all day, okay? Oh, and I got to answer this big question about how we can increase our beef production while still reducing our overall herd size. That's quite a pickle. You'll understand by the end of the video. Hey, that was supposed to open. There we go. Everything's frozen. Howdy, heifers. How are you ladies doing? It occurs to me that the evolution of our farm has kind of been like an ecological succession in nature, where if you plow a field and you don't plant anything, you get multiple competing species coming up, and then there's gradual ecological succession until you come to a climax ecosystem, which is dominated by fewer, more efficient species than in that original kind of weed field. And we started that way. I started with a business plan, kind of an idea of where we wanted to go, and it was based on a diversified, stacked set of enterprises. And originally, and we still have all these enterprises, they included turkeys, laying chickens, broiler chickens for meat, pigs, and cattle. All those enterprises stacked on top of one of each other, acting in a mutual beneficial way from not just an environmental perspective, but also a business perspective. Yep, you gals like having your hay zhuzhed. Let me in. When we started this farm, we had the land, and luckily we had saved for 20 years to be debt-free, but the land was blank. So we had to think of an efficient way to get going and get into sales and start bringing revenue into the farm without a whole lot of overhead investment. And that's where the business side of these stacked systems comes in really well. And I saw this starting out, but I couldn't prove that it would work until we were many years in, and it has worked. So where we started was with the low overhead stock, and I've talked about this many times. Chickens and pigs and turkeys don't require a lot of facilities to grow, and they're a quicker return on your investment. So that's the way to start your farm and stack up money and reinvest that money back into your farm. And bang, there you go, you're off to the races, because you don't have to build a lot of stuff to start raising these things. I see people get stuck sometimes in the planning to plan farm mode. So they want to know all the answers before they start out. Geez, I got 20 acres. How should I lay it out? You know, where should I build? It really doesn't matter. You know, soft start and then get a feel for what you have. In other words, you can get stymied by the thought of, oh, geez, you know, to start cattle, I got to put in 2 miles of fences and hundreds of yards of water piping, and I need these feeders and these barns. And no, an important part to overhead farming is low overhead kickstarting. And those smaller animal enterprises are where you're going to get your money back really quick while you start to develop a feel for the land. If you start out thinking you're going to make all your money right off the get-go from ruminants, from land extensive animals that require a lot of infrastructure, like you can see here, you're going to get stymied in the planning to plan phase, trying to lay out a farm on a blank slate that you really don't have a good feel for yet. So this is the evolution. Start with the quick payback species that allow you to invest in the longer payback species, which are going to do better for you in the long run because they're more efficient to raise. And the concern on a small farm is always how much labor do you have to give to raising all these things. It's funny how life works this way. Our experiences have been the chicken has a quick payback, but is more labor intensive. Cattle takes a long time to develop, but is less labor intensive when you get to the profit phase. So this is the succession that I'm talking about. Now, marketing. Marketing is not something that is a traditional farmer role. And the day you start your farm, you need to think about how you're going to differentiate yourself. Our farm exists in a sea of competition, other farms doing almost the same thing we do, but with minor differences. There are probably 20 to 30 direct-to-consumer farms selling livestock within a 30-mile radius of us. So I came from marketing in my old business, and I immediately began to think, what differentiates us? One good way to think of it is this. Product availability exists on a bell curve. So if you think of 100% of people that eat food, 100% of your potential customer base, most of them exist on the top, the fattest part of that bell curve. That's kind of your average Joe going to the supermarket, buying his stuff. Because of the nature of small farming, that you need to charge a premium because you're putting more labor and your input prices are higher than that kind of vertically integrated factory system, you're existing toward the kind of front end of that curve. You're a niche producer. So you need to think about what kind of consumers are going to buy your product. They're a small subset of this top of the bell curve portion up here. Not really a subset, but a completely different kind of population with different views, different things they place importance on. You need to kind of align yourself with the way that they see things so that you can sell to them on the same level or on the same page or in the same language that they're at. That's an essential part of the way you're marketing. As we were starting our farm, I was doing reconnaissance, mainly at the farmers market and any place I could find information about the farms we were in competition with. And here's some kind of stupid, simple things I came up with that got us started and put us into our own niche. Number one, we sold multicolored eggs. It seems stupid, right? We sell white, different shades of brown and greens and blues and pinks all mixed together in 1 dozen. It's about curb appeal. Most of the folks at the farmers market when we started out were just selling brown eggs because brown eggs were traditionally, you know, kind of the alternative egg, I guess, to the supermarket. Those multicolored eggs that we sold, real simple, just meant different breeds of chickens that we were carrying, sold really well. And it's just a basic differentiator, somebody walking by your booth and seeing something different than they see at the other booths. The other thing that we did is we stressed with broiler chickens, which were, and they were the bread and butter of our business when we started out, is that we focused on having broiler chickens available year-round. A lot of the farms around us were doing the kind of old-style Salatin. You come on butcher day, you bring your bag, you get your chicken, you go, you take it home, you cut it up, freeze it, whatever you want to do. We focused on producing enough chicken in the warm grass-growing months from April through October to stack away enough chicken to keep our customers supplied through the winter so that our farm never left their mind. The other thing that we did, and these are the first kind of three things that come to mind, is that beef really needed a differentiator in a crowded market. And a lot of the beef sold around here is dairy beef. So there's big dairy farms, they have bulls, and they sell them as calves. People raise them up, they get them for almost nothing, and then they sell them as dairy beef. Well, I wanted to distinguish our beef from dairy beef by raising a unique breed and having a story to tell about that breed. Dexter, if you look back at the video library, I got tons of videos on the distinguishing characteristics of Dexter beef in a crowded marketplace. That's what we started with, and it turned out that it worked. Miss Peanut, how are you doing? Those of you who saw the last video wonder how little Peanut is doing. She's doing great. Aren't you, Peanut? She gets visitors all the time. All the other 2021 calves come to see her, give her a sniff. You guys are goofy. She's been eating right along, and her transition to calf starter and sweet feed is going really well. I've tapered down the amount of hay that I'm feeding her to kind of bring her over to the feed more. To drop some of this belly, kind of clear out her digestive system a little bit. You got to keep them on hay some, because you got to keep the bacteria in the rumen that are poor digesting hay still there. You can't just quit feeding hay entirely and say go to milk or feed or something. At the same time, you have to ramp up the feed slowly so that the bacterial population in the stomach that's accustomed to or specialized in digesting that kind of picks up its population and everything gets to work properly. So diet adjustments in cattle are slow things to do. But you are definitely doing all right. I am very happy about that. So you've got your marketing niche figured out, hopefully, and you've got your land and you're starting your farm soft start. Soft start's the way to go. Figure out how much you're going to make on each animal based on actual results. Keep data, expenses, money coming in, then you know your profit per animal. I started out at the end of the first year by making a spreadsheet that showed, okay, to make a sustainable living for our farm, to provide for our farm family's needs, I'd need to raise this many chickens, this many egg layers, this many pigs, this many turkeys, and this many cattle. Now, we couldn't grow out to that maximum sort of or ideal business plan right away. It takes time to build those three things I always talk about. You got to build them at the same time. Your customer base, your farm infrastructure, barns, fences, equipment, all that stuff, and your animal population. It just takes time to bring all that up. But I began to see as we got into it in years probably 1, 2, and 3 that there was a succession to the layered endeavors or enterprises that our farm consisted of. In common terms, that means I was seeing a lot of labor going into chickens, especially broilers, because there's a lot of labor in managing them. They're touchy. You got to take care of them really well. We were doing our own butchering, huge time investment, but very profitable if you're able to do it within the USDA small farm exemption in your state. You can Google it and find out all the requirements anyway. I saw these things as phases, with the first phase being the very profitable broiler chickens we were selling and the equally profitable eggs that we were selling. Actually, a layer chicken produces more net income for us per year than a single broiler chicken. Those early enterprises were paying the bills. We were shoveling money into the livestock operation, which takes a ton of money to buy good genetics for livestock. That's your investment in the future, and your investment also should you ever decide to sell your herd later on. Registered purebred stock goes for a whole heck of a lot more than mutts at the auction barn or for private sale. Anyway, we're plugging along on developing the chicken and egg business, getting into pork, and I'm seeing, you know what? Beef is the climax ecosystem of our farm. Because beef requires less labor to grow, in our case, and we can be more self-sufficient. We don't have the grain inputs for beef because, remember, our market wants grass-fed beef. That's just the type of our clientele. Love it or hate it, and it goes for a premium. So beef was where I wanted to be for a lot of reasons. Time goes on, years go by, and Hillary and I are hustling. We're going to 3 or 4 markets a week. We're developing our customer base. We finally hit that zone at year 5 where the end is in sight, or not the end, but that goal that we had, and the farm is becoming self-sufficient financially. And I'm starting to think, okay, Now, how do we bring about more quality of life? Because we're hustling, remember. More kind of efficiency, although efficiency to me is something, it carries a lot of baggage with it, and I don't want to get into that in this video, but more bang for my buck in terms of how much labor I'm putting in. And I see that beef is really where we're heading. And at the same time, our herd's coming to what I envisioned it originally to be. Took years to get there. Because remember, we did beef the slow way. We focused on getting the best stock that we could find within about a 4 or 5 hour radius of our farm, and slowly expanded our herd, building it up from the first 3 cows that we bought up to 35 head. And all the while we were feeling around for our farm's carrying capacity, how many of each type of animal the land could support. Now, we have about 30 acres of grazing land here, and as far as chickens and turkeys and pigs, tens of thousands carrying capacity. If you're doing those alone, ruminants are what take the land. And so in essence, I was feeling around for how many cattle we could support on our land while still making all of our own hay. And from 1 year to probably the second year after that, probably year 5 to year 7, bang, we hit it, and we way overshot that carrying capacity. I can hear them snoring. These pigs, boy, I got to get a job for them. Oh yeah, that's right, they do have a job. Funny thing about raising cattle, they have a habit of multiplying. So from those 3 we originally started with, we had 6, then we had 12, and we had 24. You get the idea. So when you overshoot carrying capacity, it happens relatively quickly because your herd is expanding so fast at that point. And 1 year I said to myself, I'm not going to have enough hay. So we started buying in hay. And this could certainly be your model for your farm. You can carry a lot more cattle on the land if you're buying in your hay, and there are a lot of advantages to buying in hay, but it was never really my intent. I like the idea of being self-sufficient. I like making my own hay. I like having control over the quality of the food that my cattle eat, so that was always a goal I had in mind. I know. I've been moving kind of fast here, so let me recap. Highlights: starting the farm, good marketing plan, knowing your niche, knowing what kind of customer base that you're going for and aligning yourself with them. Starting with the low overhead enterprises, chicken and pigs, other kinds of poultry are fine too, and then moving toward the climax ecosystem of your farm, and all the while realizing you're not going to make money for a while, because if you're doing your business right, you're pouring that money back into developing business. That's typical business 101 when a business is in growth mode, if you want to stay in growth mode and be ultimately profitable. Hi Rusty, how are you doing? You look a little nervous. And this brings me to the real head scratcher. So we're running over carrying capacity on cattle, and last summer, remember, I decide that I'm going to start carrying less cattle. We're going from 12 trios, mom, calf, and yearling, down to probably 9 or 8 trios. We'll still buy in a little hay, so that means we'll probably go from 35 head down to 28, 24 head, while at the same time increasing our beef profits to the point where we can afford to reduce the amount of poultry and pigs that we grow and give ourselves a better quality of life, because those are the labor-intensive enterprises. How does that all work? It's as simple as this. We paid our investment back, and now we're at the cream stage, the icing on the cake stage, the days of wine and roses, whatever you want to call it. We spent all this money building fencing and barns and buying stock and buying haying equipment, all this stuff, and sunk profits from poultry and pigs into expanding the cattle operation. And last year we hit the break-even mark, where we had paid for all that stuff through profits of the other enterprises to make the cattle a very low overhead operation at this point. So even though I'm carrying less or fewer cattle than I would have if I'd kept expanding the herd, I'm sending more to butcher, because when we were growing out our herd, we weren't sending any of our heifers to butcher. We were using them to expand the herd. Now that we're at a level population, we can choose which heifers we want to keep for breeding, and we can send the other heifers to butcher, or we can sell them if they're really nice heifers and we don't want to send them to the butcher, sell them as livestock and make that profit off of the herd while keeping the herd at stable numbers. So you see, back in year 5, when we had, say, 20 head, we were only sending maybe 3 steers to butcher a year. Now we're sending 10 or 12 head to butcher a year. We're making all that profit. We don't have a lot of investment to put into the herd anymore, except for buying a little hay, paying for fuel in the tractors, paying for some upkeep on the tractors, and little labor investment compared to the poultry. So, you know, to get to this point is awesome. One of the things I remember from my old job is we would have performance reviews for employees. You know, one of the questions was always like, what's your 5-year plan as an employee? And I always thought, oh, what a load of crap. Well, having a 5-year and a 10-year plan for the farm is essential, because you can see this stuff coming and it brings you to where you want to go because you're deliberate in your growth. Howdy, chickens. There are so many ramifications to growth and efficiency. We ran past our carrying capacity on the farm so quickly, and at the same time our customer base ran past our carrying capacity. So we were going to 3 or 4 markets, as I said. We were selling and selling, and all of a sudden we weren't growing enough. And so at that point we decided, well, we're going to sell 3 markets, 2 markets, now down to 1 market. Keep that customer base we have, still attract new customers, because farmers market is a great marketing mechanism. You're always bringing in new customers to replace the ones that drop off. But we decided this is where we want to be in terms of customer base. We want to match our supply to it. We want to cut down on the more labor intensive things to increase our quality of life and focus on the things we really love about farming, rather than just having to pump out product as fast as we can. Now, I'm sure there are many people out there that would say, just keep growing, buy more land, you've got a successful model, just keep pumping out more and more product. There's more profit in it, right? The bigger the scale, the better you do. Well, I'd had enough of growth in my old job, because we grew an architectural firm from 8 people to 75 people in 8 years, and managing that growth I found was like being on a treadmill. So I wanted to be intentional about how we grew, where we stopped, and comparing that growth to quality of life and finding a nice balance between the two, and we've hit that. And I would advise the same. Growth is not always great. Efficiency is not always great. It's where you want to be along that spectrum, finding a spot that's comfortable for you and existing there. It's not to stop hustling. You always got to hustle, and you always got to be changing your operation to deal with changing market needs, especially now when things are changing rapidly. But at the same time, you got to know kind of where you want to be when things settle down a bit. And it took 7, 8, 9 years for me to understand the territory of growth and where we wanted to be and what we wanted to raise. And I'm happy there. I wish the same for you. You know, you can't plan a farm on paper. And you can't paper farm. I see that happening sometimes, and see, well, real world's not paper. And doing what you want to do means getting a feel for it and dipping your toe in and being able to experiment a bit and understanding what you want versus what's normal, what society tells you as far as how to expand, how to grow, what you should grow, what the trends are, yada, 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 all that stuff. Shut that out. Do what you love, and you'll make a good living at it. It seems to always work out. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm trying to get more into this kind of nuts and bolts of farm business, understand where we come from, where we're going, what the market's like, to help small farmers. That's what I started this channel for. That's what I want it to be. So I hope you have a great day. Best of luck if you're starting a small farm, and I'll see you next time.